Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in Ihdinas siratal mustaqim Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghayril maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin Ameen. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Assalamu alaikum. My topic today is about that there's no misogyny in Islam, and that's a fallacy. In Islam, women are respected and they are queens in their homes. And there's a different role for women and there's a different role for men in Islam. They're not meant to be the same. Apples and oranges are different, as you say, in this culture. And women, by their nature, are different. And they're more akin to the home. They're more involved in child rearing. They understand the needs of the children much more than the men. And so forth. They are essentially homemakers in traditional Islam. But women are allowed to earn. And at the time of the Prophet Muhammad, women were allowed to work outside the home as well. But generally, the sexes are kept apart in Islam, and in a workplace, too much familiarity is not good, and it leads to sex crimes. So it is in Islam that there is some separation of the sexes, and a woman is not encouraged to roam outside the house on her own and meet other men. But it is permitted for them to go out for their needs. They can go for grocery shopping and other things that they have to do. And they're allowed leeway in cars and are allowed to drive and so forth. These things are permitted to them. And misogyny is just a misnomer up here. Misogyny was there in Arabia when Islam came. Can you imagine this amount of misogyny? They would kill the girl child. That's how dismal they would view a woman and how lowly she was in position for the Arabs. The Arabs of Arabia were extremely evil to their women and, regarded them as mere chattel to them or property of theirs. They were not allowed property rights. They were not allowed inheritance. And sometimes even the wife of the father would be inherited by the son. That is how backward they were. So that is misogyny. And I'm going to read a verse of the Quran from Surah Nahl, the B, verse 58. And when the birth of a daughter is announced to one of them, his face becomes black and he is full of wrath. He hides himself from the people because of the evil of what is announced to him. Shall he keep it with disgrace or bury it alive in the dust? Now surely evil is what they judge. So this is the Arab man. And you have to understand that this culture of killing girl child is still there in the world today. In India, a lot of girls are aborted. Once the sex is known, they're just aborted. And this is how they treat the girl child in that nation. Not all of them. Some people are very kind to their daughters and rear them well. But this is their culture also, that they would abort the girl child and they consider her a burden and a disgrace somewhat when it occurs, their child with them. So this is misogyny. And Islam came to abolish it. And overnight, when these verses were revealed in the Quran, the child burial alive did end. And that is a fact in history. So you see, Islam came to give the rights to women. In Islam, a woman can inherit. She's given half of a son's inheritance because there's a reason for that. That she does not have to maintain the household with her inheritance or monies for her personally, while the son has to maintain his household and maintain his mother as well. So there's a difference in the reason why inheritance is given half to women. But they could own property. In Arabia at that time, women could not own property. And even in Europe, until the Middle Ages, women did not have property rights. And it was a very backward society in Christianity that they had. And so you see, Islam was a breath of fresh air in humanity, and it gave rights to women. And men were upset in Prophet's time, and they would complain to the Prophet that women have so much rights now, and but they had to live with Allah's will on them. Because they were used to a society where women were not given rights. So another misogyny concept that you have is prostitution. That's taking advantage of women. You're not giving them rights. You're just taking advantage of their body and satisfying your animal urges in you. And woman's respect is that they should be married. There should be no fornication. And prostitution is misusing the woman's body for your own satisfaction, and this is misogyny. This is taking advantage of women who are poor and who are unable to sustain themselves, who turn to prostitution. And a lot of times it's the pimp who makes the money, and the women are just employees of his. So this is misogyny. Fornication is misogyny as well, because you're taking advantage of women. You're using them and their body, and sometimes getting them pregnant, and you're not giving them rights and respect of marriage. So these are things that are there in your culture, and you think that fornication is a happy relationship. No, it is not. It is a relationship full of contempt and hatred to one another. And by its nature, it is not sanctified like marriage is sanctified. And it is an evil thing that you do to a woman, and some women get pregnant and then they abort, and so forth. They lose their religion as well. And men and women both lose their religion when they do this. They have no faith when they commit fornication acts. So it's an evil in your society, and it breeds contempt and hatred for one another. And this is using women. And this is misogyny when you do this to your woman folk. So women in Islam are a queen. The mother is really respected. The wife is counsel is heard. The daughter is loved and is the apple of the eye of the father. So these things are there, that there's so much respect given to a mother by the son and daughter in Islam that you can't imagine how a household is structured and how women are given that position of peace for them. And a woman's house is her sanctuary, and really the husband has to go by what she wishes when it concerns the house. But at the same time, women are different from men, and a man's intellect is different, and a man's wisdom is different, and he's considered to be the head of the household. And this is a patriarchal society, but this is a reality that men are different in their intellect and in their thinking, and women bounce off ideas off them, and they try to elicit their opinions, to formulate their own opinions. So women adjust to men's thinking, and that's the way a marriage is. And a woman is supposed to be obedient in marriage to her husband. And I'll take out the verse from Nisa. Men are maintainers of women, and with what Allah has made some of them to excel others, and with what they spend out of their wealth. So good women are obedient, guarding the unseen as Allah has guarded. So you see, it is this concept that you have to have harmony in a relationship, in a marriage, You can't have two bosses fighting each other. A woman should give in to the husband's requests on her, and if he does it in a nice way, but if he's obviously unreasonable, then she can argue with him and try to get her way. But if he's reasonable, then she should be obedient, and she should be respecting the fact that he maintains her. And in Islam, a woman does not have to work. She's not required to. Men's duty is to maintain the woman, and but at the same time, if she does work, it is acceptable. But like I said, the sexes have to be kept apart at workplaces, and but women are allowed to work, and it says in the Quran in chapter Nisa, verse 32, for men is the benefit of what they earn, and for women is the benefit of what they earn. So you see, there is this sanity that women can work and they can own property and they have a right to their money. And it is considered in Islam that women are incomplete witnesses, and two woman witnesses are taken in place of one for a man. But that is mainly in the case of business transactions, and women were naturally keen at that time in Arabia not to pay attention to debts and business transactions. So that's why two women were taken as witnesses. But in rape cases, a woman's testimony is accepted and she is a witness in herself. In the case of crimes, a witness is taken. And this is just in matters of business transactions that this concept is there in Islam. That being said, she was always given rights. She has been given rights to vote in Muslim countries, and she has equal rights. And I'm going to take out a verse from Azab that shows you that how women are treated in Islam. Surely the men who submit and the women who submit, and the believing man and the believing woman, and the obeying man and the obeying woman, and the truthful man and the truthful woman, and the patient man and the patient woman, and the humble man and the humble woman, and the charitable man and the charitable woman, and the fasting man and the fasting woman, and the man who guard the chastity and the woman who guard, and the maintainers, and the men who remember Allah much and the women who remember, Allah has prepared for them forgiveness and a mighty reward. So you see, this is what Allah has promised to the believing woman and believing man, that they're on equal footings. I mean, they're mentioned equally up here. They're different, but they are equal. And that's what Prophet Muhammad said also, that women are the twin halves of men. And also in another hadith, he said that there's no superiority of an Arab over a non-Arab, white over a black, and a woman and a man over a woman, except in piety. So those who are pious, those are the ones that are superior, and they're superior in the eyes of Allah as well. And in chapter 40, the believer moment, it says in verse 40, and whoever does evil, he is requited with the like of it, and whoever does good, whether male or female, and he is a believer or she is a believer, these shall enter the garden to be given therein sustenance without measure. So this is Allah, equal footing, equal paradise, and they're different. Men fought wars, women didn't have to fight wars, but they were allowed to fight. In Prophet's time, they used to go to the battle and take care of the men. Some women also fought. So these are rights. Prophet Muhammad said women are similar to men in the make, and they can do things as well like men can do, but they are different. They have a natural inclination towards the home and towards children, and that's the role of women in Islam. But they are women saints. Mary was a woman saint, and the mother of Moses also received revelation from Allah. So, uh, but they're not prophets. Prophets are different because they have to sustain a lot of stress and hardship, and women by the nature tend to give in more easily, and they would compromise on principles, like you saw with some woman saints that they would give in, like Ellen White of the Seventh-day Adventists. She was a woman saint. She had revelation, true, but she was against Trinity, but later on she succumbed to it as well. So feminism is good. Uh, you got the right to vote because of that. You got equal rights. But just try to understand that women are a different nature and they are inclined to stay at home, and that is their fortress, and that is their natural habitat. And if they go out, they should actually go out with their menfolk and their families, and be a good counsel to the men. And women's counsel is to be respected in Islam. Jazakallah.